welcome to our first ARTpath Artist Talk of the summer. Very excited to have you here. Lansing Art Gallery and Education Center has been a staple nonprofit organization in our community for 50 years now. For the past 10, they have been incredibly involved in public art creation in our community. Our ARTpath Talks are just starting this summer. However, ARTpath has been around for 3 years now. It is the work of Katrina Daniels. Our exhibitions and gallery sales director, and Emily Stevens of the City of Lansing Parks and Recreation. We would like to thank our sponsor, Lori Longsdorf, for our work contemplating behind me. And we would like to welcome our artist of this fantastic piece, Mr. Doug Delind.
Thank you. Thank you. I would like to thank Lori too. And I'd also like to thank Lansing Art Gallery and the Rathbun Insurance Agency and Auto Owners Insurance for helping us to share our work with the community. There were a bunch of ideas for what I should talk about, so I'm going to grab my cheat sheet here. And one of the questions that was put forward is, how long have you been interested in art? And basically, I've always enjoyed making things, but I had graduated from college in 1969 and was going to go off and make a fortune making polyurethane freeform houses out west. Seemed like a great idea for an advertising major. During the process of paying for my equipment, I managed to fall from one story in a barn to another story in a barn and land on my head. And at the same time, I had shot my eye full of methylene chloride, which was the only thing that dissolves polyurethane foam. At that point, I had an epiphany. I figured that this was not a way to make a living. At that point, I went back to Michigan State University and earned a degree in sculpture, where I learned that casting bronze is a good way to turn your hands to hamburger and your lungs to charcoal. So I got a BFA in ceramics and then went ahead and went back and got an MFA in ceramics and BFA in sculpture, and I went back and got an MFA in ceramics. And so I found a way to make a living at my artwork. In clay, I never made anything useful. I always used clay to make forms and faces. In my work, I'm inspired by ancient and basic civilizations as well as the work of children. I've always felt that ancient civilizations and basic civilizations have a point at which they identify themselves as a people and make a totemic representation that they share among themselves. And I've always found that fascinating, and I've always found it a very important concept to follow in my artwork. And that's basically what inspires me. I often think of the Inuit who make the Inuksuk's as they walk across the tundra, because it's so lonely. They make piles of stones that look like people, so they can always feel that they're among civilization. In my work, I always focus on human form or animal form. I don't ever make anything realistic. I make symbols of what I see, kind of reflecting what the ancient and basic civilizations do with their art. I feel like I'm making a 21st century totem quite often. One of the fun questions that was put forward was, how do I know when my piece is done? I found out with a painting, it's almost impossible to know when your piece is done. It is so easy to overpaint a painting. With clay, you're bound by a whole set of parameters that kind of force you in. There's a certain point that if you go beyond that point, the piece is going to collapse, or it's just not going to stand out. And with bronze, the scale and the weight of the piece quite often is a barrier that prevents me from going too far. And a lot of times I just kind of step back and say, oh, that's really neat. I like that. And basically, it's embarrassing to say that sometimes I'll look at a piece that I've done in the past and I'll look at it and I say, Jesus, that's really nice. I wish I knew who did that. Because it's one of those things where the epiphany is there, the magic of the moment is there, and you can't get it back again, kind of thing. There was a question also put forward about how I'm affected by coronavirus and the epidemic that we're in now. Because for 45 years I made my income was from art fairs and art galleries, both of which are down the toilet right now. So I feel very, very bad for young artists who are trying to start, and I encourage you all to help young artists wherever you can, because they don't have the avenue. When I would go to an art fair, when I started doing my artwork, if a gallery came by, they looked at my artwork, they said, hey, when can we handle your work? So I could find a way to keep in contact with that town and keep selling things in that town. But that doesn't exist anymore. So that's my thoughts on coronavirus and also on the barriers that young artists face. Also, when I started doing art fairs, it was $10 for an entry fee to try and get in the art fair, and then maybe $100 to be in the art fair. Now it's $50 for the competition to see if I can get in the art fair, and it's $1,000, up to $1,000 or $2,000 to get in the art fair. So a young person who's just starting just does not have that kind of money. The only other thing I have to say about coronavirus is, I don't have my mask on now, but be sure to mask up.
Yay!
Or not. I'm 73 and I have a 2-year-old granddaughter, and I want to watch her go to college, so mask up for my sake. Other questions? Any? Yes.
Doug, how do you decide what you want to cast in metal?
In bronze, it's I work with Vernier Casting over in Saginaw, and one of the things that I found was really important for me was to find a caster that it wasn't so expensive that I couldn't think quick and be spontaneous. I didn't want to make a perfect piece. I didn't want to make a French Academy piece. I wanted to have a certain amount of roughness, and Vernier does sand casting. So, like with this piece, the legs were contour. The body I carved out of wood, but a lot of it was really fast and spontaneous. And for me, that's really important, to be spontaneous. Yes?
How did you come up with the name Contemplating for this piece of work?
I don't know why, but this guy's head tilts a little bit to the side. And I was afraid, after I got back from the casting, I was afraid to try and bend it back up again because I didn't want to break the head off. So, and it just looked to me like it was kind of thought, thinking of something. So that was the contemplation. Yes?
What advice would you give emerging artists?
When I was going through school, I think my last term I had 16 credits, and I think it cost $169. So the economics have changed so dramatically that it's really, really hard. I was able to make my way through school working at my dad's hardware store and repairing glass and screens. I continued to repair glass and screens a little bit because it was a good income. It's nice to have something else outside, and artists usually are better makers than servers, kind of restaurant servers. They work better with their hands, so if you can find something that you enjoy and are comfortable with in the trades, pursue that also parallel to your artwork. The other thing is access public artists to find out what competitions are going on around the nation. You probably won't get them, but it makes it so you can communicate with the electronic era, which I don't do very well, but that's a really good source. It's public, it's listed under public artists, and they list competitions all around the country that are open to, some are statewide and some are national. Yes.
How do you make your color choices on your ceramics? But the things that I've seen are raccoon.
They are raccoon. Yeah.
So there's always an element of black
Chaos.
and gray.
Yes, there's always an element of chaos. So, yeah, I do raccoon firing. As well as doing this, I do raccoon firing. And in raccoon firing, you pull the piece out of the kiln, it's red hot, put it in a garbage can, or you put it in a reduction chamber. I use a garbage can full of newspapers, put the lid on it. So I get an atmosphere that is chaotic. So sometimes I get a rainbow from a glaze, sometimes I get a blue from a glaze, sometimes I get a green. I can always count on the white, and I can always count on the black. But a lot of the colors are very spontaneous. I enjoy them. So it's good. Barb?
Are there key takeaways or educational pieces for our viewers from your art that you want folks to know?
Well, I really like the piece in the bus station that I did ages ago, because our daughter just got back from Africa, and she was explaining to me that in Africa, everything is on the bus. So with the bus that's in the bus station, I put a giraffe and I put all sorts of animals as well as people, and I sat in the bus station for a while so I could see who used it, and the Amish used it, so other people with hats and the blind used it, and children used it. So I tried to incorporate that all, and the school systems were dropping the kids off there on a regular basis. So there's a lot of energy of the kids aspect of it. The other piece that locally is the bronze that's in front of the Men's I Am West on campus. It's a character like this with an arch over the top, and it's called the Gateway to Good Health. And the other is in the All Saints Church, and that one I really love, because with the raccoon firing, the halo when the sun is right, backing up the woman's head, it really looks nice. I couldn't have asked for a better view.
Doug, I have a question.
Yes.
What is the biggest challenge you've overcome with your work, what is the biggest challenge you faced, and then how did you overcome that with your work?
Well, time-wise, the biggest challenge for me now is to learn how to deal online. Because, like I say, when I do public artists, I have access to some facilities on campus, so I just go in and hold my hands up and say, "Help me, please." I think technology, the point now, the part that's the hardest for me now is, originally I would be out and have my artwork out, so a gallery would come by and look at my artwork and say okay. And now, and all the galleries that I collected during that period of time were maybe 5 or 10 years older than me.
Sure.
So they're done. So I started looking for galleries again. And they said, well, just give us your website. I said, I don't have a website. Do this. And I said, well, I'm driving through your town. Can I bring some of my pieces and show you? No. They don't want to see the work. They want to see whatever. And that baffles me. Baffles my mind with that one. So that's a challenge that I'm willing to walk away from and say, okay, I still have a couple galleries. I'm happy. Are there other questions? Yes.
Could you expand a little bit more on how your practice has changed over time?
Well, when doing art fairs, you have this level where you're paying $100 or $200. So you go away with $2,000 or $3,000, and you figure, okay, I'm good. You know, I can do 3 art fairs, 12 art fairs a year, make a living at this, and do that. And then all of a sudden, all the prices went up, and so I started going to art fairs that were farther and farther away. And in the meantime, my wife was an anthropologist at that time, so she did a paper on the fact that the artists, and she called it the middle class hits the streets, because we were going out and sitting on the street all night in Chicago, so we would get the right space.
Oh, wow.
Kind of thing, and that's and artists were going further and further out, and that's what changed. I think the farthest I've gone for an art fair is Kansas City and Philadelphia. That's been a change for me. The other change is being able to afford to go to bronze, because basically I made my living off clay. And that's the other thing I would tell young people if they want to get involved with art. It's clay or glass. If it's got weight, it's got value. It's not a leap of faith of whether that drawing or that painting is worth a lot of money. It's something you can hold on to. It's been nice to work with bronze because I don't have to deal with gravity the same way I have to deal with gravity with clay. Have I battled enough, or are there other questions?
Well, your website indicates that you work with family members. What's that like?
I'm sorry.
How you work with your family members?
Oh, well,
what that's like?
Yeah, that was a lot of fun, because they're both, the family members are now, one's a doctor down in Morris, Illinois, and the other works for DTE in Detroit. But they would, working with family members was great. I just would leave my tools out and my materials out. I didn't really direct them, because I've always thought the children know exactly how the world works. I'm the one who has problems with that. So I was always amazed at our daughter and I both did a lot of raku firing work, and I would always look at her pieces, and we would do like cats. So I would look at her cat, and I realized that all my work was all my lines were either vertical or horizontal or dissecting that. They were very rigid. And I'd look at hers and I'd say, your lines wander, Jody. Where's this going, kind of thing. And that was kind of fun. I realized that I'm much more rigid with my work.
Sure. So you mentioned the idea of totemic sources and totemic imagery. Do you look at source material? Look at
Yes.
other things?
Yeah, I do. I constantly, if I'm in a major city, I'll go to the museum, and I usually end up going to the ancient or basic civilization part of the museum. And at one point, I had, I always draw when I go. So and the part that I was very chagrined one year. I had made this character holding a dove like that, and I thought it was just a very nice original composition. And a cat peed on my old drawing books. So I had to throw them all out. I'm looking through the old drawing books, and I saw a standing kuros that I'd drawn a picture of in the Metropolitan Museum of New York. There's a guy standing there holding a bird like that. So I guess nothing's original, but I look a lot at ancient basic civilizations.
Do you ever feel like you get stymied? Do you ever get a block?
I just go out and mow them along.
Oh.
No, I'm older now, so the madness doesn't strike very often. I found the big fun thing that I do now is every night I sit down and make a drawing and mail a drawing to our daughter and to our granddaughter, and mail it to their daughter and the granddaughter. So it just keeps me challenged on a daily basis, disciplined on a daily basis. But when the madness strikes, I'll follow it. It just doesn't happen all that anymore. It's okay.
Doug, I have another question.
Yes.
So
Trina.
I was wondering if so many institutions are closed right now, and I'm sure everybody here is an art lover. I've been finding public art to me to be more important than ever. I was wondering if the coronavirus has changed your view on public art at all.
Well, I've always really been honored to have public art because it's nice when somebody discovers you on a personal level and says, you're the greatest kind of thing. But for me, it's really, really a joy to be able to share a piece with the greater public. So, yeah, and it's like I was saying, for younger artists, they should access public artists so they can find out the opportunities that are out there. Because it's going to become more and more important.
Yeah, great.
And the other thing is, during the last couple of years, I've been working with Steve Esquith at this residential college on campus, and I've kind of moved over and done social pieces, pieces that involve other people, and that's been good.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work. It's good. Yes.
Question for you. So which of your pieces resonates with you the most? Do you have one that sticks out in your mind that you like particularly?
Yeah, I think the one in the Faith Ascension, the All Saints Church, because of the way it was a bigger than life piece, that was hard for me to make a piece so the head was this big rather than life size, and I think that piece is my favorite.
Thank you.
Yes.
Have you always been drawn to ceramics and sculpture, or did you start out with a different medium?
Mud is great. I've always loved mud. The ceramics have always been great, but I do enjoy going to a drawing session every week. But in the past, MSU always had an open drawing session, and it keeps you humble to realize you can't get it quite right what you're looking at. But I've always enjoyed drawing, and I think it's the basic backbone of my work.
Going off that, one more question for you.
Yeah.
How has that drawing experience, or has it influenced your design on this piece at all? Have you had drawing experiences in like a particular context?
Yeah, it does. A lot of times with the drawings, we start off with 3 5-minute poses, and a 15-minute pose, and then a half-hour pose, and then an hour pose. By that time, I'm bored to death, so I start making little drawings off to the side, and every once in a while I look at the little drawings and say, well, that's really fun, I should try and do it. And the tall, slender, almost African-like figures that are basically came out of being bored during the drawing session. So it does impact me. But I still enjoy the figure. I still enjoy trying to do the figure a lot. Yes, Barb?
For the audience, can you describe a little bit about the study of figure drawing and what that practice looks like?
I'd say look at Matisse. He is my favorite because he deals with figure drawing. He deals with all the concept of movement, spacing, and how you see a hand or whatever. But it's always evocative of an emotion rather than being necessarily correct, which is very important to me. Always use big paper. I always run out of paper, and but it's fun. It's a challenge that never ends.
Are you continuing to make figure drawings and study collectively? I mean, aside from the pandemic.
No, we're done. We're closed down. Jim McClurkin is trying to figure out a way for us to get together, but we haven't figured it out yet.
But pre-COVID, you study with a group of
Yeah.
figure drawing specialists?
Yeah, the Michigan State University has had a room open for us for close to 40 years, Wednesday nights, 7 to 9:30 if you're interested. But it's not going to start again until the university opens, and then I don't know if they're going to allow us in, and I don't know what we're going to do about spacing and things like that. But Jim is a real good problem solver, so I think he'll figure it out. And Tom Nelson keeps us posted. Yes.
You mentioned the fairs, but other than that, how do you get your artwork noticed?
It's a good question. I think there have to be some other avenues, art galleries, but seriously, I was considering going, because I deal with faces, and I know that psychologists love faces. I was considering going to a psychology convention, renting a hotel room, putting my work all over, and giving away free booze. So I don't know, I didn't get to that point, and I think that those conferences are going to be over for a while.
Right.
I don't know, I think that probably people your age are much better equipped to figure out how to access the public at this point. Hopefully you are.
All right. Do we have any other questions at this time?
Well, thank you for your patience. Thank you.
Thank you everyone so much for joining myself, Julia, and Lansing Art Gallery for our first artist talk of the summer. And please feel free to come back in July. July 14th is going to be our next one. And please feel free to stay. And
Jean, right there.
On the bridge?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, on the bridge. You'll see information all over our social media. We'll have announcements for it. So thank you so much. Feel free to hang around for a little while, finish eating if you've got a picnic, and thank you for coming.